Welcome to another episode of Square and Compass Promotions Podcast. Today's episode featuring Chris Sova. He is a member of Joppa Lodge here in Bay City, past master and current secretary.
Yep. Oh, yeah.
And also very active in the Scottish Rite. We're meeting in the Bay City Scottish Rite Temple, which I definitely want to talk about more with Worship Brother Chris Sova. How long have you been a member of Scottish Rite for?
10 years this year.
10 years?
So.
And how long have you been a Mason for?
10 years.
So you joined Scottish Rite pretty much right out of the gate.
Yeah, 6 months after I became a Master Mason, I joined the fall class. I became a Master Mason in March, joined in October.
What was it? What encouraged you to join Scottish Rite so quickly? I know some people, like myself, I waited 10 years between my being raised and joining Scottish Rite. What was it about Scottish Rite that encouraged you to join so quickly?
Well, growing up here in Bay City, we're fortunate to have the Bay City Scottish Rite Masonic Center, and actually I worked here when I was I think it was 15 or whatever, and I didn't even know what this place was at the time. It was my buddy's sister who said, "Hey, you guys want to come make some money, just doing dishes." So, that was my first exposure, but I didn't know what it was. And then when I joined Lodge, I read the book Freemasons for Dummies, and so I had by brother Chris Hodap, and so I had I knew. Then I learned what Scottish Rite was, that big place that I had done dishes at, that some of the guys were still in costume. So at that time in our lodge, we had several very active Scottish Rite Masons, and so I was able to, after lodge, talk to them about it, and really sparked my curiosity and really wanted to join and continue that light in Masonry.
Now that's something I wanted to talk about, especially meeting here at the Bay City Scottish Rite Center. But something that is true in Windsor and is true in different places I visited is just how important a Masonic temple or a Scottish Rite temple can be, not just to the Masons of the community, but to the community itself.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, when I was here the first time taking a tour, they were setting up for a high school prom, I think. Yeah, it was a high school prom, and then tonight you have a dance happening here.
St. Patrick's Day pageant.
And you started working here, as I'm sure many people did, long before you knew what Masonry was.
Yeah.
So can you just talk about what this center, what the Scottish Rite Center means to Bay City and means to the community?
Well, that's one of the things that we're working on here at the Bay City Scottish Rite Masonic Center, is because Bay City's gone through sort of a transformation. We're a city that was pretty down in the dumps, and through some investments and people starting to care about our city over the last 10 years, it's evolved. We had a new uptown development a couple of years ago that's brought in more people from around the surroundings and more investments. And that's what we're trying to do is, this place on Center, it's always been that building on Center, and now we're trying to sort of lay our roots a little better with our community, because we've always been able to, we've always been a microcosm within ourselves with our members, but, as membership declines, through the natural, from the golden age of fraternalism, it's gone down. We're starting to bring more people in our community into this building and start caring about it, and its historical significance, because fortunately here in Bay City we have a huge, a big following for anything that's historic. We're actually on the Center Avenue Historic District, and so our center is part of that. And one of the ways that we're drawing people from the community and is hosting events like this St. Patrick's Day pageant, and bringing those people that normally wouldn't come in. And then we're also next, or 2 months from now, in April, we're having a comedy night that's going to bring in a former Detroit Red Wing, Darren McCarty. He does a slapstick comedy tour now, and so that's going to be a big draw for people to come into our building and actually realize, one of the biggest things I get when I give tours of this is, oh, I never knew this existed. I just always saw this building, didn't know how big it was. And, one of the great things about a building is the original work in here is to the 1920s. I mean, we're structurally the same thing as we were almost 100 years ago. So
I'm trying to do the same thing with the Windsor Masonic Temple.
Yeah.
You know, running tours and, you know, promoting the building, because it is, you know, it's such an important part of Windsor's history and the history of the county or of the area. But, you know, oftentimes it does get overlooked by people.
Right. A lot of people don't realize that a lot of the movers and shakers of Bay City were members of, you know, like the Bay City Lodge and Joppa Lodge, and subsequently became members of Scottish Rite as well. You know, one of the Dows from the famous Dow company, chemical company, he was a member here. I think it was Eldon Dow. And we just had so many movers and shakers, not just within our community, but for the state of Michigan and even some across the nation that have been members here.
Now, you mentioned, you know, you do tours of the building.
Mm-hmm.
How would somebody or a group go about taking a tour? Would they contact yourself? Would they contact the Scottish Rite Temple?
Well, they would contact me, essentially, because I'm also the secretary here now at another cap. But normally they just get a hold of me through email or through phone call. Normally email's the best because I always have my email on me. And, you know, I just normally arrange something that works out for them and for me. Because I do work second shift full time as a nurse. And that's hard to rearrange.
How do you kind of balance everything out? So past master, current secretary of Joppa Lodge. Secretary of the Scottish Rite Center,
Yeah.
Full-time second shift nurse, and then also you've got a family.
Yeah.
So, you know, one thing I know a lot of Masons are struggling with is trying to balance all their different responsibilities and make time for their lodge and concordant bodies. What advice would you have for those guys?
You know, one of the things that I would give advice on is to make sure that you're doing stuff within the length of your cable toe. Being a younger Mason and being very gung-ho, when I first part of my Masonic career, I was very, yes, I can do that, yes, I can do that. But now that I've been married and we have a 3-year-old and we have one more on the way, I've been finding myself saying,
Yeah, congratulations.
Thank you. I've been finding myself more and more saying, no, I can't do that, but here's the stuff that will help you. You know, I've been trying to empower people more to, you know, do these roles rather than take it upon myself. And I know my wife, and she'll probably watch this, you know, she wants me to cut back more and more, but you know, as a Mason, it's hard to do that. And especially when you love the fraternity so much and you want to be involved. But I have been working slowly, inching back, you know, like I've been outstretched. I'm trying to bring that back in and just, you know, do what I can properly and to the most effective way without, you know, just doing it and it not being good. So, but always the lesson of doing what's within the length of your cable toe.
So not just, you know, people often think of that in terms of referencing actual distance from a lodge, but also, you know, there's a length of your cable toe in terms of what you're capable of doing with your time and with your resources.
Yep.
And not allowing that to overwhelm you.
Oh, yeah.
You know, so you mentioned it's been 10 years. Has it been over 10 years, or are you coming out to your 10-year anniversary?
It's been 10 years for the Blue Lodge, technically 9.5 at Scottish Rite. So.
And what have you, in that time, have you noticed any changes within the craft locally? Within this building, it seems like, you know, you've made a real emphasis based on what you said to promote this building to the city or back to the city. Have you noticed an increase of interest in the temple, in masonry, or decline, or what have your experiences been locally?
Well, locally, of course, we've seen the decline. You know, statistically, you know, when I first joined over here at the Scottish Rite, we had over 2,400 members, and now we're down to about 840 something in the matter of 10 years. But a lot of that was due to negligence on our part of not reaching out to our brothers and finding out. A lot of them, I think, when we did our first purge, we had several hundred brothers that had been deceased. And that's one thing, you know, not just our local valley, but our northern Masonic jurisdiction recognizes as like a brother-to-brother program, that we need to be reaching out to these brothers that, you know, might have lost contact with Lodge and all that kind of stuff. And so not just here at Scottish Rite we do that, but at the local Blue Lodge, you know, doing that, you know, and just through, I mean, a lot of it has been through, you know, death, because, you know, you had that big wave of guys that were joining, and now we're starting to see that it's slowed down, thankfully. But the great thing though is that the interest is still there for masonry. It hasn't died, and it's just, you know, even though our numbers declined, I think the interest in Freemasonry is at an all-time high, actually. And I think we can thank in part the Northern Masonic jurisdiction for helping push that right now, because what they've done is they started a program called the Path Forward, and it's basically being the beacon or the light for guys that might want to join Masonry. They've been trying to do an outreach on that and pull it, and actually they're doing it right now at the Grand Masters Conference in North America. They're introducing, it's going to be the Northern Jurisdiction, Southern Jurisdiction, and Shriners International of North America. They're introducing this new website. I'm not 100% on the details, but it's going to be a website basically that's going to, like, because one of the biggest things is, like, we've had an increase in applications here at Scottish Rite, but a lot of them are non-members, and so we have to find them a Blue Lodge. Well, this new website is going to funnel these guys that are interested in joining Masonry, and it's going to, you know, they can go, like, say you're interested, you're going to go to this website, and you're going to type in your information. It's going to spit out the data, and they're going to be able to send that to each respective Grand Lodge across, you know, the United States. And I don't know if Canada's involved on it yet, or I don't know what the details on that, but I know it's Northern Jurisdiction, Southern Jurisdiction, and the Shriners. But anyways, that's because Scottish Rite recognizes that we need our Blue Lodges to thrive in order to survive. And so that's just a new way of being able to get guys into Masonry.
The Blue Lodge is thriving. To me, is such an important aspect of either of the rites, Scottish Rite or York Rite.
Yeah.
Right, because that's where they all got to come from first. And if you don't have a thriving Blue Lodge, eventually it'll catch up to the rites.
Oh yeah.
We've got, you mentioned, how many tours have you done here of the building so far?
Oh gosh, in my year here, I've probably done, I'd say, close to 60 tours.
We are at the Windsor Masonic Temple starting tours. I'm starting them through Square and Compass Promotions, which also does this podcast.
Okay.
Our first one's coming up February 23rd, but then we're going to try to do public tours regularly, and also reach out to, historical groups or community groups who might be interested.
Mm-hmm.
Since you've done 60 tours, I was one of them, and I had a great time taking it.
Oh,
what advice would you have for the Masonic Temple and for myself facilitating these tours? How do you go about deciding what things you're going to emphasize and how you're going to make the tours interesting and exciting for everybody?
Right. And that's something that I've been learning a lot. And what I try to focus is on, try to know your building and know what's unique to your building, and try to find, like, fun facts too. Like, one of the cool things about our Scottish Rite is it has a sister Scottish Rite in Hamilton, Ontario.
Been there many times.
Yes. And the only difference in our auditorium, it's our auditoriums that are almost like the Hamilton Scottish Rite has the boxes on the floor, and we don't have that. And one thing I always give when I'm showing people the auditorium is, I always ask them, have you seen The Handmaid's Tale? And, explain to them that, this is the sister Scottish Rite and where that was shot. So, also, the architect that built or designed our Scottish Rite, he's also designed or did the architecture for the Grand Rapids Masonic Temple in Grand Rapids, so they have a very similar auditorium.
Have you found, like, any specific groups, or has it been just a cross-section of the community taking the tours? Has there been any specific groups that you've reached out to or that have reached out to you?
Right. Well, our number one tour is for rentals. A lot of brides and all that kind of stuff coming through and seeing our center. They're looking for that old but new, and that's, we have a great blend of that here. We are able to, step back in time and have that elegance of, like something that, that you want, that these girls and guys are looking for in their weddings.
Do you, or how do you foresee um, Masonry moving into the future, um, both in terms of the Scottish Rite and this building and Joppa Lodge and just Masonry in general? Um, what challenges do you see it facing, and how do you see it overcoming those challenges?
Luckily, and I just had this conversation the other day. Luckily, fortunately, the Grand Lodge of Michigan and also the Scottish Rite Northern Jurisdiction, I feel like they're both progressive in Masonry, and they're doing stuff now in order to take care of our future. Grand Lodge of Michigan has the 2020 project, which was basically bringing together all resources and all that and having them under one house, so it makes it easier for Lodge to reach out to our Grand Lodge and get the resources rather than having to jump through hoops A, B, and C in order to get the right information. Now everything's more centralized, and we're actually able to get information a lot quicker. That being said, our lodge, we had just bought that lodge down the road, a couple blocks from here a few years back. And, we have the money to keep the building going, but that's one challenge that a lot of Masonic lodges is that they sit empty, 29 days out of a month when you don't have a meeting. So last year we started talking, we're like, we can keep on staying in this building, or we can sell this building and move into, something like here at the Scottish Rite, so that we're, we're able to, because all we need is a room to meet and to do our degrees, because lodge isn't a building, it's where you meet with your brothers. So, setting ourselves up for the future, and future brothers, we finally just had a seller and we just sold the building. So we're looking at how, basically taking lodge and using our resources better, because we don't need to pay for a building. If we could find a room to rent and able to have our lodge meetings, that's how we see our lodge going forward, and being able to do the degrees and all that kind of stuff, because lodge exists outside of four walls to us. And as far in the progressiveness of Northern jurisdiction, like I had said previously, they've set the example for everybody else, with this Path Forward project and all that, being this beacon for Masonry as a whole, not just for Scottish Rite, but as Masonry as a whole, and getting people to the proper source. Because you can go on the internet and find everything, for Masonry, from everything that we're this to that, to, real stuff. So they're trying to be like that main, just basically bringing everybody in and centralizing Masonry, which is, it's sort of, it's a problem. Like, each state has their own governance and all that kind of stuff, but that's sometimes a hard thing. And I think United States Masonry is that we do have so many different jurisdictions and different ways of doing about things. We don't necessarily have a central, thing that, here in America, we're used to a central government. Each state has their own governance to a point. But we don't have that in Masonry, we don't have like that central point where everything, might flow down from. So, I'm not saying it's a good thing, not saying it's a bad thing, but, it is nice having that central point where people who are interested in Masonry